Now, this Women's Month, we are featuring 3 young Filipino photographers making an impact through their photography. We take a closer look at how these talented women see the world and ask them about how they feel about the current state of photography here in the Philippines. Say hello to Geela Garcia, Lisa David, and Ennuh Tiu. Spelled like henna, but when Ennuh, right?
Yes.
Ennuh Tiu. It's a beautiful day, girls. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let us start off first with your origin story in photography, because it feels like, I was looking through all your works, it feels like it's so purposeful. It's so easy right now to take photos and so easy right now to just go out there and shoot, which is really the advice you give other people, but then you have a different thrust, it feels like. Let's start off with you first. Can you tell us a bit about your origin story and a bit of your advocacy when it comes to your craft?
Hello, good morning. I'm Geela Garcia. I'm a photographer and journalist. So I started with photography because in college I was one of the campus journalists in Matanglawan Ateneo. And then it really started because I went to protest. I saw how I saw the issues that were being protested on the ground, and I cover stories on food sovereignty, women, climate change, and the environment.
You know, I love that origin story because the running joke, especially with people from Ateneo, hindi sila nagpo-protest eh. Yung mga nasa tapat yung nagpo-protest, yung mga taga-UP. Pero it's nice to see that Ateneo does it also. Speaking as a Lasallian, by the way. So, I get you. Lisa, let's start off with, let's go with you now. I mean, like your origin story as well. I'm curious to see, because we're a bit of a generation apart, and I are from the same era, sort of. We probably touched film. But then I'm not sure if you have as well. Could you tell us a bit about how you started
Geela
out?
and I kind of have the same origin story. It started when I was in the university. I wasn't part of the student publication, but I joined the photography organization.
Yeah.
But before that, I was taking up accounting.
Yeah,
and I realized that like an office setup wouldn't be very ideal for me.
Yeah.
And then
Numbers aren't as pretty.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I switched to journalism. So when I was doing photography and I was taking up journalism, it made sense for me to pursue photojournalism. And I'm particularly interested in documenting stories on environment, on women, and general news as well.
How are you, Ennuh?
In contrast to Geela and Lisa, I'm not a photojournalist. And I actually didn't want to be a photographer, honestly.
Really?
When I was still in university, I was like, I had a photography class, but that it didn't really speak to me at that point as something that I could really do. But then when I realized that you could use it as a tool to tell a story, like to document, that's when I really started becoming passionate about it. But more on like personal stories, I do personal narratives. And I also document other people. I like photographing drag queens as seen in my work also. And a lot of the photography work that I do comes from like a personal introspective space. So, yeah.
You know, you mentioned that you photograph drag queens. You love storytelling at the moment. Is there any particular story that got you hooked into this particular line of work?
Well, it started actually when I was having struggles during the pandemic because I didn't know, like I can't go out and shoot, and I'm not a photojournalist, so I don't really have access to that.
Yeah.
And then I started sort of digging deep into the story that I want to tell. And then a lot of the story that I had back then was about me and my struggles in being confined at home. And then it really started with that. And it really helped also to have other people guide you and help you shape the story that you want to tell. And that's what really got me hooked into it when it became like a tool for me to document my life and what I'm feeling and sort of like put like a visuals to the struggles that I have. Yeah.
And you know, you mentioned the internal struggles, and actually that leads me to one of your pieces of work here. Because if I'm not mistaken, you did work on women who live in coastal communities, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you take a look at that, it feels like a very specific struggle. It feels like a very specific mode of storytelling. And first of all, how did you encounter things like that, and why do you feel like those particular struggles of a very specific subset of women are worth highlighting?
Like for me, it's because I really exposed myself to communities of activists. And when you visit these communities, you're really gonna see the stories on the ground and the real life, daily Filipino struggles. So I particularly was interested about the coastal communities and the lives of women, because usually when we think of coastal communities, we think of the men as fishermen. But then these women, or let's say the wives of these fishermen, they also contribute so much to the fishing sector. They're the ones who do the accounting, they're the ones who take care of the kids, they're the ones who allow these fishermen to go to the sea because of the invisible care work that they do. So they're still part of the whole process of like making of bringing food to our tables. And it's just so important to talk about the stories of women, because these are invisible stories that we don't usually see, especially in production.
I love that you're using the term invisible stories because it's such a visual medium. And of course, we saw a bit of the work there a while ago, and you can see what they're all going through. But Lisa, talking about we talk about invisible stories, but then you're also encouraging more women to become photographers, to tell stories a bit more. And you're actually part of a couple of groups, Diversify Photo and Women Photograph. Can you tell us a bit more about those organizations and the thrust?
Diversify Photo and Women Photograph are international organizations catering to BIPOC and women and non-binary photographers. So they're creating database for photographers, not just photojournalists specifically. It can be documentary photographer, fashion photographer. So it's a database where editors can have access to reach out to these underrepresented photographers for work. They also provide community workshops and for example, if there are grant applications, they provide waiver for the fees. And yeah, it's just a community where photographers can reach out to other photographers globally. And
I don't think photographers realize, or people who want to get into photography, sorry, photographers do realize this, but people who are looking into photography don't realize how much of a collaborative experience it is actually learning and learning styles, learning techniques, and just how important is that in those particular communities. You mentioned underrepresented. You mentioned those out there who are trying to, I guess, upskill themselves or put themselves out there. How important is it to be part of a community for those who want to get into photography, but then thinking, oh, I got to learn by myself first. I need all of this or that, or baka YouTube University might be enough.
I think nowadays it's not much on the technical skill, but the support that photographers seek in these communities are, for example, how much should I charge? What's the standard day rate? So because of these organizations, like we have this space to discuss these issues that we don't usually have access to. Plus, there are mentorships available in these organizations. So there's an annual application for mentorships, and it's really a nice space to have because you can really ask anything about photography, about the technical skills. But yeah, of course, the technical skills are still important. But having the space to navigate the industry itself, the financial aspect, especially nowadays, photography, most photographers wouldn't survive with just photography. It's important to upskill, do video, do writing, and take on other jobs outside of photography. For example, I also do I recently take on a job that's completely not related to photography, and there's no
Accounting
shame.
related?
Fortunately, not.
Okay, yeah.
And there's no shame in admitting that you're trying to find other source of income outside of photography to supplement.
Kasi hindi na uso yung starving artist, diba?
Yes.
I mean, like, I don't know, that was a term during our time, back in the early, mid-2000s, but then, of course, that's not the case anymore.
Age reveal.
Oh, yeah.
Era reveal.
The reason why we're saying young, because we're all still young, okay? But let's also focus on the fact that you have an international workshop recently, I believe Angkor Wat. The Angkor Wat workshop in 2024. Can you tell us a bit about that experience first?
It was really crazy. Actually, I met Geela there
Oh, really?
2 years ago when I went.
Okay.
And then
was she crazy back then, or?
Well, she was pretty.
She said yes.
It was like photography boot camp, like I would say, because you had to like be on assignment every day, and then the feedback would be instant because you would get feedback that very next day, and then everyone would hear, and then everyone would see the photos that you took.
Yeah.
But it was a very interesting experience, and something that I hope more people get access to. Honestly, like we need to do more of those things because really, like, even if I've been working as a photographer for a couple of years, it was really different. It was really eye-opening.
Yeah.
And then the mentors, it was really such a privilege to be mentored by such highly regarded photographers in the industry, and then for them to give my work the time of day, and then for them to give me feedback. It's very interesting. And I think it's something that I'll carry with me like in my practice in the years to come.
It's so reflective right now, actually, of the current state of how people consume media. Na napaka-immediate yung feedback. Like there's no hiding it what people think.
Yes.
And people think that they could hide behind a keyboard or their
Yeah.
phone because their faces are not necessarily seen. But when it comes to that, I think that leads in perfectly to my next question, because we're going to go very vague here and talk about yung state of photography dito sa Pilipinas. I remember a few years ago, a particular brand, which I won't mention, actually had ambassadors selected, and there was not a single woman on on that particular batch. I like how you were like, yeah, naalala ko yun. Yeah, we all remember that. To the point that some of the ambassadors backed out when they found out that there were no women as part of that group. I don't know if things have changed since then, especially when it comes to women photographers, or whether they're more represented now, and of course whether or not their works are more seen. Where do you think we are now?
Well, I would say that at least it has progressed a little, in a sense that there are women photographers. Really, it's really more of who gets these jobs. So. It progressed in that sense. If you would compare it maybe to like 10 to 20 years ago, it's not as much. So at least there's some visibility now. But the same issues still persist, like low wages for especially for local photographers, and then still issues of safety, harassment, because these are still very common to women photographers. So even I would say it has progressed a little, but there's still so much work to be done.
Some people look at photography, and at least outside looking in, they don't feel like it's a gendered job. Outside looking in. But then when you look at the industry being part of it, do you feel that it is maybe skewed towards more male photographers in terms of preference, or do you feel that the female photographers are able to progress just as well because of the merit of their work? Sorry, napakahirap yung tanong. But, kaya mo yan.
Definitely, there's progress. I think I remember there was a job posting before in a local publication when they were hiring photojournalists, and it stated there that preferably male. So
Preferably male?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it exists nowadays, and the aftermath of that brand ambassadorship incident, it sparked conversation on who gets highlighted, and who gets not just recognition, but I remember there's another photographer, Claudine Dancel.
Yes.
After that incident, she created a database of Filipino and non-binary photographers, and I think everyone could like contribute and like share like who they who should be like who should be shown as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of trailblazer photographers, women and non-binary in the Philippines that deserve more recognition.
And you're the one who reacted most violently to my to my reference from that particular incident. So where do you think we've gone since then? Because it was a moment wherein even those who weren't in photography actually realized, hey, parang may mali dito.
Yeah.
And when you look at particularly, there are so many Filipino photographers who are so accomplished and who have done so much, and yet they weren't part of. Not even mentioned, or not even a small part of it. Where do you think we are now?
It's so interesting that happened, because a lot of people after that are more mindful. So they try to at least include women photographers. But it still happens. It happens still, actually. Like there are some workshops where it's all male photographers. But when it comes to what I do, it actually helped me because like some people, since I work in fashion and portraiture, some people actually prefer to have an all-women team, but you need to be championing for that. Like you need to be in a place of power to really champion for that and to really request that female and non-binary photographers get the jobs that fit them. It doesn't necessarily have to be women all the time. Like if a guy is a better fit for the project, then that's fine. But just have equal inclusion for all genders, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's way better.
You mentioned it that there could be moments where there could be all women photographers. There could be moments, rather, all women team.
Yes.
That's obviously. I don't think it happens that often.
Yeah.
I think it is possible though, considering the skill sets already out there. But the state of the community though, do you feel that it is, if it is artist driven, especially, do you feel that the women now have a bit more of a platform to stand on compared to what we had a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, as Geela mentioned, we've come not so far from that, but at least there's a bit of progress because people are like now more aware that, oh yes, we have to be more inclusive, and people are calling out these brands that are not really that inclusive and exclude women.
We have a list here of a few female photojournalists, especially those who really shine during the drug war
Yes.
from a certain period. And I believe after the recent arrest of President Duterte, a lot of photographers from that time came up with their old reel of work. I was taking a look at the list, and a lot of these photographers actually are not just photojournalists. I know this because one of the names I want to mention is Hannah Morales.
Yes.
She shot me for a sports shoot for the New York Times, and the next thing I know, she's shooting the drug war, and also she was at National Geographic, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And then you also look at Eloisa Lopez, you also look at Alex Oncal, Kimberly De La Cruz. When you have women like that who are able to show variety in their work and also do work that really contributes to community or contributes to storytelling and even pushes certain social conversations that need to happen. Just how important are figures like that for female photographers?
First of all, I would just like to recognize, that these photographers like Ana Reyes Morales, Eloisa Lopez, Kimberly Cruz, really paved the way for younger photographers like us. Because it makes us realize or makes us feel that we can do it. Because I remember when I was younger, there was a specific instance when I was still a campus journalist. I was literally pulled by a man.
Yeah.
Like dragged, because I'm super tiny, super petite. So men could literally just grab me. And it's really hard to do photography when you're a woman. But you remember these women, you remember that these women were able to do it. And they have their own distinct voices as well. So it just reminds me that it's really important to assert your space in spaces that you feel are a bit strange or foreign for you, especially if it's male-dominated. And it's important to have those voices because I feel like the experience of being a photographer in a woman's body is really different from the experience of a photographer in a male's body. Like, we consider a lot of things differently because we're women. So we think of stories differently. Like, I feel like, let's say, for example, you wouldn't exactly think about the perspective of let's say, going back to the stories of the coastal communities, you wouldn't think of I feel like you wouldn't really think of where the women are if you're not a woman. I feel like someone who has a perspective of a woman would immediately think about where the women are in these stories. And that's why it's important to have women figures in the industry, such as Hannah Reyes, Eloisa Lopez, and Kimberly Cruz.
Yeah, how about you? I mean, because she mentioned all of that, seeing things through a lens of a woman, if using a camera pun. But when you take a look at the fact that your work actually also revolves around children as well, and seeing it through their eyes, and obviously it feels something different that perhaps predominantly male photographers won't be able to tell a story as well. How important is it that, just piggybacking on her line of thinking, that we have a different set of lens, especially with female photographers out there, telling versions of the story that probably you only see?
Yeah. I think whenever I go into communities, especially most of the time, it's always the mother and the children who would welcome me in their houses. And being a woman, they usually perceive me as their own child. And I think I don't want to center it on being a woman, but I think a big part of it also is a person's character. Like, it could also be a male photographer who would be entering people's houses. But I think since it adds to me, whenever I try to get access, whenever I try to be as sincere as I can, not just hi, I'm a woman, please let me in. But yeah, since like the gentleness, there's a different approach, I think, especially in the younger generations of photographers and photojournalists. It's not just the hard news, it's not just the actions. Hannah Reyes tend to portray the tenderness. It's always in her pictures, and I think she's one of the photographers I really admire. Hannah Reyes, Morales, Eloisa Lopez, and yeah, these women showed us this there's other approach to photography rather than just action shots or
Yeah, there's a story, the iba talaga yung storytelling nila when they put things to frame. And we're, I wish we could have a podcast because we needed all that time. And bilang ate ng grupo, kasi magka-age tayo almost there.
May age reveal.
Oh, may age reveal.
Age reveal.
Age reveal natin, 98 tong dalawa, okay? Si Ennuh, we're of the same range. Pero let's wrap it up with this because it feels like there has been more support for female photographers. They're supporting themselves as well. But what do you think needs to be done to support them even further, to support female creatives, not just photographers, because it is a team. It is a team effort, especially with certain shoots. What do you feel needs to be done to really level the playing field totally when it comes to female photographers and creatives?
First, I think more local grants. I mean, not just for female photographers, but for everyone, for every artist who wants to try getting into photography, doing a project where they don't have funding, access to that. And also, I think something that would be very important for people who want to pursue like studio work, which is really where most of the money comes from when you do commercials. It's really nice to have access to equipments and like more equipments available for loans, especially for those who can't afford it. Because it's really expensive. Photography equipment's really expensive. And then it's so hard to find your photographic voice if you don't have like the money to rent out all these equipment. So it would be nice to have more of that. Some brands are already doing it, but of course you need to have like it's not that open for all yet. It's a bit exclusive.
The accessibility is not quite there.
Yes.
And that needs to be addressed. All right, ladies, it was such a great time talking to the three of you. For those who want to see your work, follow you guys and see more updates. We'll go one at a time from this side to there just so you can promote yourselves and your work. Where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram at Geela Garcia.
Geela Garcia?
I'm also on Instagram at Lisa Marie Dav, and also my website is lisamariedavid.com.
Right. And Ennuh?
Website coming up, but I'm on Instagram. ENNUHCHEW.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the photographers or voices of the women that we have here today. Geela Garcia, Lisa Marie David, and Ennuh Tiu. So, thank you so much for joining us. And we cannot wait to see more of your work online and hopefully maybe have some printouts here one time soon to discuss it even more. Thank you so much.
Thank you.